Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Viditam Dena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Gaur Premanande, Hare Hare Bol. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we're given encouragement to begin from where we are now and to make progress from whatever state we're in. Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita how the natures that we have come naturally in this particular body that we have because of our previous associations. They're very strong because associations means associating with the three modes of material nature. They're called gunas or ropes. And a word that Prabhupada frequently uses in his commentary in the Bhagavad Gita in translation is that when we associate in the material world, we acquire the modes. And a particularly often quoted verse, or Srila Prabhupada often quotes it, and so do other acharyas, is Purusha prakriti stohi bhunkte prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangosya sarasad yoni janmasu. That is that by sangha, or connection, or association with the three modes of material nature, we acquire them, and therefore we attain various levels of existence. Some on a spectrum are good and bad. In the overall scheme of things, they're all bad because we're somehow or other ensconced in matter. However, the mode of goodness is better. Krishna says, Yesham tvantakatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva mohanir mukta bhajanti mam dridhavrta. When one becomes purified of rajas and tamas and comes to the sattva gun, then one can act with determination. Otherwise, we're constantly disturbed by rajas, which is like smoke, and tamas, which is called abominable. It just is a complete degradation, a completely degraded situation. So one should not lament. Krishna encourages us, and so do all the acharyas, for whatever situation we're in now. He says, does Shukadeva Goswami in the Srimad Bhagavatam, as you well know, Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha Abhira Shumma Yavana Kasadaya Yene Chapapa Yadapashra Yashaya Shuddyanti Tasmai Pravavishneve Namaha. Whatever situation you happen to be in, and he lists a lot of different types of people who are known at that time to have deviated one way or another and gone off in a retrograde situation that is outside the high standard of civilization at the time. And he says, it doesn't matter. These people, from whatever position they're starting from, can become purified. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami says, Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udharati tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. That whatever you're after, you may have a desire, and the desire is born mostly of our previous association. That is our particular aspiration in life. He says, Akama sarva kamo va. So you may be akama, which means you don't have any material desires. That's a kind of cultivation, or you've reached that point because of a kind of cultivation or association that you've had previously. Akama sarva kamo, or you may have all material desires. You want everything. moksha kama, or you may have come to this feeling, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes in one of his commentaries to the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita in the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sanatana Goswami, chapter 22, Madhya Lila, that there are three kinds of ways in which we cultivate the heart. And one of them is through association with those who want to liberate themselves from the material world. We get this sense of wanting to just give up the material world altogether and become liberated. And this is called moksha. Moksha kama. I have a desire to be liberated. And Shukadev Goswami says, in any of these situations, one can come to the perfection of life by, one can come to the perfection of life by taking to Tivrena Bhakti. Tivrena means like a ray of sun that's concentrated in a particular place. If you've ever taken a magnifying glass and you concentrate the diffused rays into one single point of light on, for instance, a piece of paper or straw, then it will combust and burst into fire. Endless fun for kids at home. Kids, cover your ears. Don't try this at home. So he says, whatever desire you have, whatever configuration of body that's generating a particular kind of desire, you take to the path of devotional service and the pure devotional path, and you'll become successful. Not only will you attain whatever it is you think you want, but you'll also attain pure devotional service. Or Krishna will give you what you want in such a way that you won't want it anymore, and you'll want to take to devotional service. One shouldn't be afraid of this, because if we have a little intelligence, we can understand that what we want is born out of our previous conditioning. It's not actually us. It's a kind of false sense of self that wants particular things in this world. And we can use our intelligence to understand that if I'll just be brave enough, taking to devotional service and surrendering means you got to have courage. And don't just recede back into the material world and say, oh, I'll just go back to sleep again. But have a little courage and also have faith that Krishna knows what he's doing. It's very helpful to trust the doctor. And if we do that, then Krishna will arrange things in such a way that will fulfill our desires. We'll be able to work in such a way that's consonant with our particular nature, but we'll also become purified and attain pure devotional service. That's the premise of what I'm about to say today, and with a little more specificity. Does anybody have any contention with the premise so far, or like to hear more, or think it should be embellished more, or fleshed out? Can anybody restate the premise in one sentence with no semicolons? Probably you can do it. Go ahead. And then Shastra Sar is ready also.
Wherever you are, whatever your desires are, start devotional service, and Krishna will arrange everything else for you.
Okay, if you're starting an advertising firm, you can hire him. Shastra Sar, Prabhu, go ahead. We need a microphone in the back because he always sits way in the back. It's the bleachers, nosebleed section. But he likes to be near the Shastra because that's his name.
Regardless of your situation, do bhakti.
Thank you. You can join his firm. Yes. Okay, so that's clear. Now, I want to give some examples today of those who we might be able to relate to a particular attitude that they had, and whose attitude, the attitude that they had compelled them to take to Tivrena Bhakti. So the first one is Devahuti. And I would like to epitomize her attitude in taking to devotional service as, I'm sick and tired. Have any of you ever had this attitude about anything in life? Oh, good. Very nice. Her hand went up right away. So if you've ever been sick and tired, and I'm not going to take it anymore, you ever had that feeling? Your Dave Dibburn moment? Dave Dibburn was my friend in high school. He came over to us, bounding into our house one summer night. He lived 2 blocks away. He had shaved all his hair off, which was a cardinal sin at that time in history, and said, I've had enough. I'm not messing around anymore. I'm going to learn how to play the flute. I'm getting serious now. So, yeah, you have your Dave Dibburn moment. I'm tired of this. So let's read a little bit about Devahuti's mentality. This is a helpful mood to have, and we might adopt any of these moods, or we might already be in this mood, but we can see how we can move forward from there. So first of all, let's hear how Devahuti expresses herself in this mood. Now there's 2 marks in here, so it's the first mark, okay? Okay, thank you. So first let's examine the 3rd canto, 25th chapter, the Glories of Devotional Service, which is an amazing chapter. If you have a little opening in your life, you should read this chapter over and over again. Try to memorize all the verses. Call in sick. Okay. This is 325:7. Devahutir uvacha nirvina nitaram bhuman asad indriya tarshanat yena sambhav yamanena prapannan dham tama prabho. Devahuti uvacha. Devahuti said. So she's the mother of Kapiladev. And Kapiladev is the incarnation of Krishna, who's appeared in her womb to come and teach very specified knowledge. He's one of the incarnations that's named in the Shastra, who will appear as the son of Devahuti. So she's speaking, and she says, Nirvana, disgusted. Nitaram, very. So Nirvana Nitaram means she's really disgusted with, you'll see what she's disgusted with. So she's speaking to her son, Bhuman, O my Lord. Asat, impermanent. Indriya, of the senses, Tarshanat, from agitation. Yena, by which, Sambhav Yama Nina, Sambhav Yamanina, being prevalent, Prapanna, I have fallen. Andam Tama, into the abyss of ignorance, Prabho, O my Lord. So here's the translation. Devahuti said, I am very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses. For because of this sense disturbance, my Lord, I have fallen into the abyss of ignorance. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Here the word asad indriya tarshanat is significant. Asat means impermanent, temporary, and indriya means senses. Thus, asad indriya tarshanat means from being agitated by the temporarily manifest senses of the material body. Where we are evolving through different statuses of material bodily existence, sometimes in a human body, sometimes in an animal body, and therefore the engagements of our material senses are also changing. Anything which changes is called temporary or asat. We should know that beyond these temporary senses are our permanent senses, which are now covered by the material body. The permanent senses, being contaminated by matter, are not acting properly. Devotional service, therefore, involves freeing the senses from this contamination. When the contamination is completely removed and the senses act in the purity of unalloyed Krishna consciousness, we have reached Sad Indriya, or eternal sensory activities. Eternal sensory activities are called devotional service, whereas temporary sensory activities are called sense gratification. Unless one becomes tired of material sense gratification. There's no opportunity to hear transcendental messages from a person like Kapila. Devahuti expressed that she was tired. Now that her husband had left home, she wanted to get relief by hearing the instructions of Lord Kapila. So this, again, some of the phraseology, she says, Nirvana Nitaram Bhuman. So she's calling out, basically saying that, oh my Lord, she knows her son is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Said, I'm very disgusted with my senses. So the path forward then Prabhupada mentions in the purport is epitomized in, or summarized in the verse, Sarvopati vanirmuktam tatparatvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktiruchite. And that is that devotional service means to actually use the senses, but for a different purpose. Rather than trying to use the senses to find satisfaction in and of themselves, I engage them in service. In the mood of service, I'm using my senses, but I'm not thinking that I'm trying to enjoy it. But I'm trying to give enjoyment to someone else, that's service. And the person I'm giving enjoyment to, in the conception of pure devotional service, is to the Hrishikesh, that is the master of the senses. So examine your hand and notice it's part of your body. It serves the whole body. And when the hand serves the body, then it's in its natural condition and it's happy. And similarly, when we serve Krishna, we're in our natural position, and anandamayo bhyasat, we're very happy, beyond happy, we're blissful. And when we try to serve ourselves independently, we get frustrated. And when we get tired of that experience of getting nowhere with our senses, or actually getting a discordant result. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yehi samsparshaja poka dukkha yonaya evate adyantavanta konteya nateshu ramate buddha. And that is that when you become intelligent, or an intelligent person notices that whenever I try to independently use my senses, I'm not under the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead when I act. And this can go for our very lifetimes as well. The way we move about in the world becomes altogether frustrating when we try to make progress independent of Krishna. Whenever we make decisions that are in line with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, then we're moving properly in the world and we won't get an aberrant result. So, is that a word? Aberrant? Better look it up. Maybe I'm making stuff up. Then Krishna says, if you just try to stimulate your senses, so the mind is called the sense within. In other words, you're living for yourself and you're just trying to connect the senses to their object, get as comfortable as possible, or get as much sensory experience as possible that keeps you entertained. He says, Yehi samsparshaja poka dukkha yonaya evate. That's setting yourself up like you're going to get the result of misery. It's like that's what's coming out of the womb of this experience is misery is born. So a person becomes intelligent and thinks that doesn't work. Unfortunately, people don't know the verse, Sarvopati vanirmuktam. It's not widely known. So oftentimes people think I should just restrict my senses and I should become detached from the material world altogether. But there's not much wiggle room there because sooner or later you got to come back. It's like if you go on strike, there's a few people go on strike nowadays. It's not very common. It was more common in the 1970s. There was more unionization. It's been discouraged, but I don't want to go into politics. There's not as much striking nowadays. But when people do go on strike and they're out of a job, then eventually they got to go work somewhere. They're going to come back. And if you're being chased somewhere, like in a dream, someone is chasing you, and then you duck into broom closet, they're still out there. Sooner or later, you can't live in a broom closet, right? You're going to come out, and then you're going to be chased again. So this is the idea of the material senses. If you just try to run away from them, or you go on strike and say, I'm not serving you anymore, then sooner or later you got to go back somewhere. And unless you've improved yourself, unless you've found the proper way to use your senses, then they're going to go back into sense gratification. Maybe a little bit, an inch at a time, until you're way back down into the material morass again, or all at once. You can just make a royal declaration. It didn't work. Now I'm going back in to the material world. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami says, Yene rivindaksha muktamaninas tvayastabhavad avashudha budaya aruya krishnena paramparam tata patantyato nadrita yushmarangraya. Whatever way you've tried to arrange your life to get freedom from the senses and detachment from the material world that doesn't include attachment to Krishna means that you're in a shaky position. Avashuddha Buddhaya means you didn't think it through very clearly. You didn't come to the proper conclusion, and therefore, however long you're able to maintain that, doesn't matter in eternity, you're still going to fall back down again. You still have to become attached to some kind of sense gratification, unless you get the superior thing, which Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, Vishaya vinivartante nirahara sedehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param jushva nivartate. If you're able to engage your senses in Krishna's service, and yene ravindaksha, you're able to actually develop an attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His service, and your senses become purified, then you have locus standi. Did you look up the word to see if it was fake or real? What is it? What word? Aberrant?
Aberrant is causing or deserving strong dislike or hatred. It says it's from the 1600s, recoiling, strongly opposed to, from Latin aberrantum, which is inappropriate. Present participle of aber, shrink back from, be remote from, be out of harmony with, meaning repugnant and loathsome.
Repugnant. Okay. Thank you very much. Yes? Aberrant. Abberant. ABB.
ABER.
ABER. That's the word? Is that what you gave me a definition to? You said abhorrent. Aberrant. Can you look that one up?
Aberrant is an adjective. It means departing from an accepted standard. And in biology, it also means diverging from the normal type.
Now I can't even remember the context that I used it in. In any case, now we got it straight. Okay, so this is nonetheless Devahuti exhibiting this attitude of I'm sick and tired. I'm fully disgusted. Nirvinna means I'm disgusted with it. Disgust is a good emotion if you know where to go with it. Otherwise, you can become bitter, or you can just take refuge in lower modes of nature to try to quell this sense of disgust. However, Devahuti's doing it the right way. She's reaching out to the authority, Krishna, and saying, I'm disgusted, therefore please instruct me how to get free from this sense of futility, engaging in sense gratification and always getting the opposite result of what I want. Okay, so this is the first attitude that can arise in this world, and which can be helpful, and which we can also use. If you notice a sense of disgust, you can remember Devahuti and then watch how she was able to employ that in a way to become elevated spiritually. So there's 5 attitudes we're going to discover today, or pinpoint, and this is the first one. If you'd like to make a comment or ask a question, please do. Yes, Krishna Saka Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, thank you for bringing this. Actually, I was reading Aila Gita, 11th Canto. In that, King Pururava also was disgusted. In that verse, it is like 13th verse. I was just reading. It says, "To hell with me." He was saying because he was attracted to Urvasi, and he was very disgusted. And in the 14th verse, he says, "Who else than Supreme Lord will save me?" So
Yeah, so now if you ever get a crush on somebody and you can't shake it, then read this section. In fact, people come to me all the time, it's like, I can't get her out of my heart. It's like, okay, here's your medicine, read this. So, him or her. So the thing is that Bhagavatam covers all psychological conditions of the human being. He knows us well. It's Krishna. He knows. And he's so merciful. He's come in this form to say to us, here's you. Take a look. And you go, oh my God, that is me. And then, here's how to process it. We're safe with the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is Krishna. He takes us by the hand and he says, here's how to get out of this in a dignified way, to move out of this situation, which is a kind of degradation by the three modes of material nature. So yes, in the Aila Gita, we find this situation where Pururava becomes enamored of Urvashi, so much so that he starts acting below his station by a mile or two or 1,000. And then we can see, here's how this unfolds. And it always unfolds like that, sooner or later. Subhadra.
You used it in the sentence, you'll get an aberrant result.
Okay, does that work or not?
Yes.
Yay, we win. Okay, thank you very much. Vaikuntha Nayaka, coming to us from Mysore, the home of Mysore Pak and the Mysore Palace. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, I had one question. You talked about disgust with the material senses, the material enjoyment. You talked about disgust. But sometimes, is it possible that maybe disgust is not the word, but frustration? Even when we are in devotional service, we see that our efforts, maybe the preaching efforts that we are trying to do, it's not increasing, or things like that, or book distribution efforts, there is no results to that, and you get frustrated. People are not reciprocating and things like that. So I know it's a very immature situation to be in, but that's where I am. So if you could give some suggestion on what could be the cause of it and how to keep going in such a situation, that will really help me.
The way to keep going is to redefine your life and start over again. Because oftentimes we become frustrated by self-imposed goals and values. I say, I have to be like this. I'm comparing myself to other people. It's like, why can't you be more like Chopati? It's like, good luck. They have Radhanath Swami there, so how are you going to be like Chopati anywhere else? So, any way you put yourself into a frame and you say, I have to be like this, it has to be like that, then it becomes very difficult. Great news, you can redefine what success looks like for you. As an example, since you mentioned book distribution, this happens all the time. Like that. So sometimes devotees go out on book distribution and then they say, I'm frustrated. And say, why are you frustrated? Because I couldn't distribute a book. Then say, okay, change the reason you're going out. Don't go out to distribute a book. Just start with being a hero for walking out the door in the first place. And if you move it back to where you can handle it, then that's more reasonable. Don't move it all the way back to like I thought about going out. But move it back to a point of being reasonable, that yes, I'm doing the best I can with what I have, and I'm going to engage myself like that. Because you can remember that birds fly in the sky as high as they're able. The sky's unlimited. So whatever number you pick, it's not extremely significant. It's just how much we can develop capacity towards reaching various goals to improve ourselves and refine ourselves according to the way Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that we should. That is, we should develop tolerance as an example. And one of the reasons that it's important, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, to go out to teach Krishna consciousness to others. One example is through book distribution. It's a very purposeful and efficient way to do it, is to get purified. He said, you should write. He told everyone you should write, but don't do it to get your name on a book, because then you'll be frustrated. In fact, I was just talking to a best-selling author the other day, and he said, writing a book is the hardest slog you'll ever go through in your life. He said, unless you're prepared for blood, sweat, and tears, then don't get into it. And Prabhupada writes that when you write something, you should do it just for your own purification. In fact, he mentions that some of the great Acharya authors, they weren't thinking about being published. They were just using it as a forum to consolidate their ideas. So the difference between frustration is like, well, I didn't get enough hits on the internet. Jay Shetty got 10 billion hits. He's the top guy on the entire social media. It's like, why can't I be Jay Shetty? Well, why don't you just be yourself? In fact, there's a famous marketing expert. His name is Seth Godin. And he talks like this all the time. He said, you don't need a billion. You just need a group to express your values where they share and be real. Be who you are. Be self-contained. Don't try to be somebody else. We get really frustrated when we look at someone else and say, I have to speak like such and such. Well, I can't. You can speak like yourself and speak from your heart. That's when people actually listen. When you're truthful, sincere, and you actually hold forth in a way that people realize that they're speaking according to realization and not they're not affected with an A and saying that, I'm something more than I am, or trying to be somebody else. People like when you're yourself, and as a great poet once said, don't try to be somebody else. It's better to be yourself. All the other positions are taken. You can just be yourself. So it's kind of helpful in that way. And the sense of frustration in one's service means that we should look for ways that we can work around the particular problem that's facing us, and that always leads to some kind of breakthrough. That's why we came up with that saying during the pandemic, that workarounds bring turnarounds. I kept seeing that there's always something. This is you should expect this. There's always going to be some blockade to anything you do. And then if you make an ultimatum and say, then I can't do it. Okay, then you can't. You just painted yourself into a corner and now you're stuck. And never walk away, but always look for a workaround. Okay, what's the next workaround? Keep looking for workaround. Can we work around this? Yeah, we can. Hey, it looks even better than we thought in the first place. So remember the great Kung Fu, was he Kung Fu? I hope I'm not making a blasphemy against, what was his name? Most famous, Bruce Lee. It's Kung Fu? Qigong, sorry. I made an offense. Sorry, Bruce. But there's a recording of him talking about being like water. He speaks with that charming accent that he had, and it's like, mind like water, be like water, go around it. Water's relentless. It finds a crack somewhere. It's like, okay, stop here. You can't go any further. Like, yeah, but there's a crack way over there. It's like, now it all goes down the crack. There's some place to go. So frustration just means there's a workaround. We're being called to make a workaround so that we can find something better, another path to go to. And you can count on the fact that there's always going to be a blockade, always some problem. And you can look it up in history. every great breakthrough came from some frustration. You look it up in the Bhagavatam, every great realization breakthrough came when somebody got cursed. I guarantee you can trace it back. You're like, okay, you're cursed, you're going to be an elephant now. It's like, oh my God. And then how's that going to work out? Fine, if you just look for the workaround. And so frustration is the door to enlightenment. Embrace it and try to go find the way around it, pray to Krishna, and there'll be a silver lining. Sorry, that was a cliche. Okay, so now we're going to go to the next attitude because we're running out of time. And the next one, the next iconic personality that I think we can relate to is Dhruva Maharaj. And I would like to epitomize his attitude as I'll show them. I'll show them. And my mother used to say, my mama Uvacha, she used to say, never underestimate the power of all show them. She used to tell us kids that. She said, never underestimate the power of all show them. If you get it in yourself to steam, like, okay, they said I couldn't do it. Now I'm going to do it. I'm going to make sure it happens. And you'll find throughout history, but the best of all of them, obviously, and that's the Bhagavatam, it's the best of the best, is Dhruva Maharaj. I'll show them. And here is his statement. This is from 4:8:37. So he had met, at this point, Narada Muni, and Narada Muni, now Dhruva was a child. Summary for those who don't know the context. Dhruva was a child. He was a prince. He grew up in a palace. He had more than one mother, and he had one father, the king. So one day, out of a sense of want to be included, as a little boy would, to sit on the lap of his father with his stepbrother, he tried to climb on his father's lap. And the stepmother was there. She was appreciating that her son was sitting on the lap of the father, the king, and specifically because there was a sense in the palace that she was the favorite of all the queens. Things happen. So as Dhruva was trying to get on his father's lap out of affection and out of wanting to be included, the stepmother said, "No, you don't. Can't go there. And in fact, not in this lifetime." What was most frustrating was the king didn't do anything about it because he was henpecked. There was a sense that he couldn't speak against his wife. So he just let it happen. And Dhruva developed this sense. It welled up in his heart. Remember I talked about conditioning? So Kshatriyas have this mix of goodness and passion. And the passionate nature is the wanting to be the best, wanting to excel, and I'll show them. Like they go into battle. It's like, you want to see this? Okay, come over here. Let's fight. So that sense welled up in Dhruva's heart that, okay, I'm going to do something about this. He ran to his biological mother, who was very sympathetic, but there was nothing she could really do. Somebody had suggested, perhaps it was his stepmother, that God can help you. Next life, you can try it. So Dhruva had that in his mind when he went to his mother, and she confirmed, yes, only God can help you. Where's God? In the forest. That's where great yogis, sages go. He said, that's where I'm going. I don't care what anybody says. I'm out of here. With that mood of, I'll show them, he headed for the forest, not really having a clear plan. After all, he was only 5 years old, and he had never really studied the science of yoga before or how to find God, but he just knew, I'm doing this because I want payback. Now he met his guru, This is an important instruction also, that if you want a guru like Narada Muni, you better have a desire like Dhruva Maharaj. And Narada intercepted him by Krishna's arrangement, always happens, and gave him some good instruction, moral instruction, said, here's how you relate to people. If it doesn't work out, then you can just be patient and don't become overwrought with these feelings that you have now. And Dhruva said, thank you, Sadhuji. Appreciate it. It's really good instruction, but I'm still going to the forest. And it was a test. Narada wanted to see how determined he actually was, and when he found out how determined he was and what he wanted, Narada gave him good instruction about how to actually do the yoga process, which Dhruva carried out to such a degree that he personally met the Lord face to face, who then fulfilled his material desire. By that time, Dhruva didn't want it. By what time? By the time he saw Krishna, when he was already purified, he thought, what did I ask for? This was a big mistake. Nonetheless, it shows, and he's the epitome, Dhruva Maharaj, in fact, mentioned in commentaries related to the verse Chaturvida bhajante mam jana sukritino arjuna arto jignasa artarti gyanicha bharatarshava. He wanted something, and he wanted the Lord to fulfill his desire. In the process, he took away, did the Lord, Dhruva's sense of wanting the revenge and also wanting some grandeur in the material world. So here's Dhruva Maharaj at 4:8:37. He says, O learned Brahmana, I want to occupy a position more exalted than any yet achieved within the three worlds by anyone, even by my fathers and grandfathers. If you will oblige, kindly advise me of an honest path to follow by which I can achieve the goal of my life. Purport. When Dhruva Maharaj refused to accept the Brahminical instruction of Narada Muni, naturally the next question would be what sort of instruction he wanted. So even before Narada Muni asked, Dhruva Maharaj expressed his heartfelt desire. His father, of course, was the emperor of the entire world, and his grandfather, Lord Brahma, was the creator of the universe. Dhruva Maharaj expressed his desire to possess a kingdom better than those of his father and grandfather. He frankly stated that he wanted a kingdom which had no competitor within the three worlds, namely the higher, middle, and lower planetary systems. The greatest personality within this universe is Lord Brahma, and Dhruva Maharaj wanted a position even greater than his. He wanted to take advantage of Narada Muni's presence because he knew very well that if Narada Muni, the greatest devotee of the Lord, could bless him or show him the path, then certainly he would be able to occupy a more exalted position than any person within the three worlds. Thus he wanted help from Naradaji to achieve that position. Dhruva Maharaj wanted a position greater than that of Brahma. This was practically an impossible proposition. But by pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a devotee can achieve even the impossible. One particular point mentioned here is that Dhruva Maharaj wanted to occupy an exalted position not by hook or by crook, but by honest means. This indicates that if Krishna offered him such a position, then he would accept it. That is the nature of a devotee. He may desire material gain, but if he accepts it only if Krishna offers it. Dhruva Maharaj was sorry to refuse the instruction of Narada Muni, therefore he requested him to be merciful to him by showing him a path by which he could fulfill his mind's desire. Make no mistake, this desire he has for a kingdom is based on revenge. It's all show you. That's what got him going. It wasn't that he just was lusty for everything, but he, as a Kshatriya, that conditioning, it sparked in him such a desire that I want to outshine everybody. That did it. It pushed him over the edge, and he had that mood of I'll show them, and that gave him the determination to move forward. Nonetheless, he still had a sense, because of good association, because he was actually an exalted soul, but then by the association of his guru, Narada Muni, that it has to come from Krishna. And I want to get it from Krishna. And this is an important point. It comes up in the story of Kardama Muni also, when he's engaged in meditation for thousands of years, and then he meets Lord Narayan directly. And in his prayers, he mentions that I need a wife. And Narayan says, I know that. Why wouldn't I know that? I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and I've already arranged it for you. And there, Prabhupada says that whenever you have some kind of material desire or request, best to leave it to Krishna, because you can ask yourself, who knows better, you or him? Yeah, we don't know, because we pick things all the time, and then it turns out like, I love it, I hate it. But Krishna knows how to fulfill our desires in such a way that it all works together. So that's an important aspect. Nonetheless, the mood is there. You can see that the mood of a Kshatriya, and this is what he wants. Now Dhruva is famous because he dedicated his energies towards following his guru, Narada Muni, and he also had a sense that I'll only take it if it comes from Krishna. Comments and questions? Three, two, one. Okay.
So Maharaj, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was teaching Srila Sanatana Goswami, he was particularly mentioning about this aspect, that how Krishna thinks about the devotees when they ask something material. And he was saying, Krishna kahe ama bhaje mage vishay shuk, amrito chhari bish page ei baro murkh. Like Krishna is thinking that, oh, he is worshipping me, but he is asking for material enjoyment. He is getting, he's not asking for nectar, or he's leaving nectar and asking for some poison. Ami biggo ei murkho ere bishay kene dibo, sacharan amrito diya bishay bhulaibo. But I am intelligent, so why I will give him the poison? So I will make him forget the poison, and I will give him the nectar of my lotus feet. By that he will be satisfied.
Yes, we find with Dhruva Maharaj that even after he attained Krishna, because of the intensity of his devotional service, and he said, Swamin Kritartosmi Varam Nayache, that I was searching for broken bits of glass, but now what I got was a real jewel. But still, the Lord made him take the other benediction. He said, no, take. He gave him all that. And it was sort of a lament for Dhruva Maharaj that, like, God, why did I ask for that? I shouldn't have taken it. Nonetheless, there's a way in which he gave it to him, and Dhruva used it in Krishna's service for many, many years. What was it, 36,000 years or something like that? Some benediction. Srivas Prabhu.
5th Canto, 19th chapter, 27th verse.
5th Canto, 19th chapter, 27th 27th verse. Hare Krishna. Oh, this is it. Go ahead and say it, Srivas Prabhu.
Satyam dishatyartitam artito nrinam naivarthado yad punararthita yataha swayam vidate bhajatam anichchatam ichchapidanam nijapada pallavam.
Translation, please. The Supreme Personality of Godhead fulfills the material desires of a devotee who approaches him with such motives, but he does not bestow benedictions upon the devotee that will cause him to demand more benedictions again. However, the Lord willingly gives the devotee shelter at his own lotus feet, even though such a person does not aspire for it. And that shelter satisfies all his desires. That is the Supreme Personality's special mercy. So, Akama sarvakamo va, one has all desires. It's inevitable that we'll start from some situation, whatever it is that sparks us to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami says Don't worry, it'll be purified. Okay, one more.
I like the point where it said that devotional service is about making the impossible possible. I was actually reflecting on your own example, like when you set up goals every year, it sounds so impossible, and how it becomes possible just by the devotional
We're
service.
praying right now, actually. And to be honest, we're constantly running scared because we it always seems impossible, and Krishna always fills it. So living kind of on the edge is, I don't know, it's kind of fun lifestyle in a way. And it's not good for sleep, but my godbrother, the exalted Mahatma Prabhu, he always likes to say, we have fun showing that the impossible is possible. He said this is the fun of the Krishna conscious movement, making the impossible possible. Yeah. Okay, so the two personalities we have so far? And what epitomizes her mood? Yeah, disgust. I've had enough. I've had it. That's it. No more. No mas. And the second one? And his mood is? I'll show them. Okay, yes, one more point.
I was just going to reflect on what Mataji said. I was dressing the deities and I was going on praying to Mahaprabhu, touching his lotus feet that make this happen, make this happen. I don't know how I'm going to get so many enrollments in the next few weeks. I don't know how we're going to achieve the goal. So that was one point that I was just thinking about. Yeah, it's scary.
Damodar Vamsidhari will go, no problem, you can do it. That's his mantra.
I also wanted to
yes,
ask
please.
For Devahuti, where she's saying that she's disgusted once in Bhagavatam, and then she takes over, listens to Kapil Dev, and perfects her life. For living entities like me who get frustrated, disgusted every day about the senses, what is it that it could be a few weeks going fine, and then you say that, oh my gosh, whatever you worked on, you're like down the drain again. Again, you have to get up and work hard. Any tips on how to slowly get rid of this waxing and waning?
Prabhupada says that in Chaturmasya, which is upon us now, heavy austerities we're performing by not eating spinach. But people do, traditionally in Vedic culture, they would perform severe austerities during the Chaturmasya period. In fact, even in early ISKCON, and maybe even today in some places in the world, people take these heavy austerities. One of them is, just for a little levity here, that you only eat havishan, which is some mung and rice boiled together, no spice, no salt. Yum, yum. Vapi smaran bhavam. So, but that's not all. You clean a place on the floor. I'm not talking about a plate on the floor. On the floor, you clean a place. You put the havishan on the ground. And then you eat with your hands behind your back. You get on your knees and you go down to eat the food just right off the floor with you. And as much as you can eat, and it's only once a day, with your hands behind your back. Once you come up for air, you come back up, that's it. That's all you get for the day. That's one of the austerities for Chaturmasya. Fun for the whole family. Great new diet idea. I remember my godbrother who used to love to eat, but he'd follow Chaturmasya. I was usually gone during that time because I'd go away to India for a little while and then I'd come back. And when I left, he was robust, and whenever I'd come back after that period, he looked like Gandhi. And why did I bring that up? Because Prabhupada says in the light of the Bhagavat that our lifetime is a Chaturmasya-like existence. Now, how does it compare? Because after performing these austerities, these chaturmasya austerities, why chaturmasya? It's during the 4 months of a rainy season. You can't go out anyway. In those days, there were no stable roads to travel on during the flooding times when the rains were coming so heavily. Therefore, students and ascetics, they would stay in. They stay in a shelter and they just perform austerities. And during that time, it's hard to tell how you're being transformed. I'm not recommending these austerities. That's not the austerities of Vaishnavism. But if you stay in one place and you practice very intensely, after a while, you just take it as normal. The time you realize it is when you get in the cab and you're heading out. And you go, oh my God, the world's different. It didn't change, I changed. I'm reformed. I'm a different person now because I took this. And in our lifetime, Prabhupada says, we're in a chaturmasya-like existence. If you're following 4 regulative principles and chanting 16 rounds, you're doing heavy austerities, actually. Once when some disciples were asking Prabhupada on an initiation day, they said, do we have to fast today? And Prabhupada said, you're already fasting. You don't eat meat, fish, or eggs. For the rest of the world, that's fasting, because that's what everybody else eats and lives for, in fact. So you don't know it, you can't see it, but then Prabhupada says when you leave this body, that's when you'll see it all. And as long as we're in a physical body, we're going to have problems. And there are going to be some anxieties and so forth, especially if you take responsibility for something. But when you leave the body, even moving up to that point, when you look back and you realize, oh, guess what? I kind of just used my whole lifetime for Krishna consciousness, which is what you're going to see, because that's all you've ever done. And then, you know, when you leave the body, then you'll realize this bodily existence, you know, I just used the body just fully for Krishna service, and there were a lot of troubles involved, but yeah, I did the right thing. You got a good life. Better than good, a great life. Okay. Next one. We have Bharat Maharaj after he took care of the little fawn. And what happened? When he passed away, he took another body. What did he get in the next body? And what did he think when he went into the deer's body? He thought, never again. Have you ever had that attitude? Never again. I'm never doing this again. Of course, that can happen and then you find yourself doing it again. But when it becomes so strong, this mood, never again, and you channel that into your devotional service, then you have this very strong impetus. So we should cultivate that. And here we go from the 5th canto. And here we have 5, 8, 29. 5, 8, 28, and 29. Here, Bharat Maharaj, after being the undisputed emperor of the world, having everything, and then having the glory of walking away from it all. I mean, what could be better than that? And then blowing it on a little deer. After I joined the Krishna Conscious Movement, just a little anecdote, I felt like a great hero walking away from the material world, joining Krishna Conscious Movement. Ha ha ha, beat the system, I'm out of here. I made it inside the ashram. And then they told me, you're way too skinny, you got to eat. So I took it seriously. And at the Sunday program, they always had freezing cold sweet rice, which is like heavenly nectar. And I have to admit that after, I think my 3rd week there, I drank so much sweet rice that I went next door to the garage that was attached to the temple, and I leaned against the wall, and the thought came through my head. Headlines in the Lafayette newspaper. kid renounces the world and dies of overeating. And I did think, never again will I drink 20 cups of sweet rice after the Sunday feast. So we can come to this point. Think of Bharat Maharaj, his situation to the 10th power, that he had been this great emperor king. He had come into the, he had the good sense to walk away from it all, and he had performed intense austerities, meditating on Narayan within the sun, doing his mantras, taking bath several times a day, and just, he was so advanced that, he had tears coming from his eyes, and his hair was always wet from just having bathed and staying totally squeaky clean. And then all of a sudden, in such a way that it's such a trivial matter, actually, ultimately. In fact, I've seen on the internet a few videos of little fawns that got separated from their mother, and it is a little compelling when a fawn comes up, and rubs against your leg, and then you think, oh, God, we can't, what are we going to do? Let's take him in, So when he realized that he had been snared again by Maya, and he had to take the body of a deer, then he had this intense feeling. Here he goes. Although in the body of a deer, Bharat Maharaj, due to his rigid devotional service in his past life, could understand the cause of his birth in that body. Considering his past and present life, he constantly repented his activities, speaking in the following way. Purport: this is a special concession for a devotee. Even if he attains a body that is non-human, by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he advances further in devotional service, whether by remembering his past life or by natural causes. It is not easy for a common man to remember the activities of his past life, but Bharat Maharaj could remember his past activities due to his great sacrifices and engagement in devotional service. 29. In the body of a deer, Bharat Maharaj began to lament. What misfortune! I have fallen from the path of the self-realized. I gave up my real sons, wife, and home to advance in spiritual life, and I took shelter in a solitary holy place in the forest. I became self-controlled and self-realized, and I engaged constantly in devotional service, hearing, thinking, chanting, worshiping, and remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. I was successful in my attempt, so much so that my mind was always absorbed in devotional service. However, due to my personal foolishness, my mind again became attached, this time to a deer. Now I have attained the body of a deer and have fallen far from my devotional practices. Purport: due to his stringent execution of devotional service, Maharaj Bharat could remember the activities of his past life, and now he was raised to the spiritual platform. And how he was raised to the spiritual platform. Due to his foolishness, he became attached to an insignificant deer and thus fell down and had to accept the body of a deer. This is significant for every devotee. If we misuse our position and think that we are fully engaged in devotional service and can do whatever we like, we have to suffer like Bharat Maharaj and be condemned to accept the type of body that impairs our devotional service. Only the human form is able to execute devotional service, but if we voluntarily give this up for sense gratification, we certainly have to be punished. This punishment is not exactly like that endured by an ordinary materialistic person. By the grace of the Supreme Lord, a devotee is punished in such a way that his eagerness to attain the lotus feet of Lord Vasudeva is increased. By his intense desire, he returns home in the next lifetime. Devotional service is very completely described here. Tad anushravana manana sankirtananar dananusmarana biyogena. The constant hearing and chanting of the glories of the Lord is recommended in Bhagavad Gita. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dradavrata. Those who have taken, everyone okay? Got enough air? You sure? Those who have taken to Krishna consciousness should be very careful that not a single moment is wasted and not a single moment is spent without chanting and remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His activities. By His own actions and by the actions of His devotees, Krishna teaches us how to become cautious in devotional service. Through the medium of Bharat Maharaj, Krishna teaches us that we must be careful in the discharge of devotional service. If we want to keep our minds completely fixed without deviation, we must engage them in devotional service full time. As far as the members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness are concerned, they have sacrificed everything to push on this Krishna consciousness movement. Yet they must take a lesson from the life of Bharat Maharaj to be very cautious and to see that not a single moment is wasted in frivolous talk, sleep, or voracious eating. Eating is not prohibited, but if we eat voraciously, we shall certainly sleep more than required. Sense gratification ensues, and we may be degraded to a lower life form. In that way, our spiritual progress may be checked, at least for the time being. The best course is to take the advice of Srila Rupa Goswami, Avyarta Kalatvam. We should see that every moment of our lives is utilized for the rendering of devotional service and nothing else. This is the secure position for one wanting to return home back to Godhead. It's a great lesson. And we also hear of this in the Bhagavatam when we get to visit the living entity within the womb, who becomes conscious of the fact that, again, I'm in a womb, and now I'm in a serious trouble because the living entity who's fortunate in that situation, who remembers, begins to pray to the Lord, interestingly, that let me stay here. Because right now I'm conscious and I want to serve you. But as soon as I'm pushed out of the birth channel, the senses, which are intrinsically connected to their objects in the material world, they're part and parcel, then I'll be externally focused and I'll forget again and I'll end up back here again. Have you ever had that sense? Here I go again. How did I get back here? And so developing this sense, never again, that we got from Bharat Maharaj. You can see it when he came in his next life as Jad Bharat. Never again. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what anybody offers me. Whatever, I'm sticking to the strictest path there possibly is. He became dead to the world. Doesn't mean we become antisocial or drop out of everything, but we should have that resolve within our heart that this is it. No mas. No more messing around. Only Krishna consciousness. What do you think? Yes. Haribol. 2 points? Yes, Prabhu. It's better with air, right? Life goes better with air. Oh, and microphones too. We can offer microphones to these exalted souls who are dedicating their lives to Krishna consciousness and are about to speak.
A couple of points. One, there was mentioned about one should not be voracious eater.
Don't be voracious eater, and also speak into the mic.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was just recollecting that yesterday.
You got to turn it just slightly.
We had a Stanford program and Prasadam was good. So I was eating and thinking the next day is Ekadashi, so there will be little austerity. But then, but that's what Srila Prabhupada mentions. Next day you won't be able to get up. So it was hard to get up because of yesterday. And other thing I was thinking is, I was just reflecting on the point where Srila Prabhupada mentions, if we misuse our position and think that we are fully engaged in devotional service and can do whatever we like, we have to suffer like Bharat Maharaj. And then Srila Prabhupada writes at the bottom that we should be careful. Just reflecting that it's important that we don't misuse.
There's a mood there's a word that describes that as entitlement. And entitlement is our enemy. The opposite of that is akinchana. Kinchana means I'm not entitled to anything. I don't have any asset. I'm only here as a beggar. Who let me in? I don't know. But somehow or other I got in here with these exalted souls and I'm given a chance. Don't think like I deserve something now, because as soon as you do, Kunti says, then to the degree that you have entitlement, to that degree you can't get pure devotional service. So develop this sense of I'm the servant of the servant of the servant. and somehow somebody made a mistake and let me in here. And I just happen to be here, and even if they did let me in, I'm the runt of the litter, and I'm not going to survive without the help of the devotees. Okay, one more. Yes.
I liked in the translation, Bharat Maharaj is saying that because of my foolishness, I got the body of deer. Sometimes, like, what I think is, oh Krishna, I am doing devotional service, you should protect me, why are you doing this? But here, Bharat Maharaj is saying that because of my foolishness, I got the body of deer. And I don't think like that. I think, oh, I was doing devotional service, why this happened to me like that?
Yeah, so that's one of the quintessential attitudes that the Bhagavatam invites us to develop. Tatenu kampam susamikshimanu bunchana evatma kritam vipakam. Vipakam, there's a hellish place called Kumbhipaka. And vipakam means that, there's an old saying, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. Also, if you find yourself cooking in a pot, turn the fire off. Stop cooking yourself. So there's this sense that I'm doing it to myself. Tatenu kampam susamikshimanu bunjana evatma kritam vipakam. You're cooking yourself in the material world by your errant decisions. So if you find yourself in that situation, then don't blame anybody else but yourself. Take responsibility for it, and also find that it's Krishna's mercy to instruct you how to do that. It may not come to you all at once, but yes, please.
To me, what struck me is that it says never again, but then my mind said, okay, then what's again, So I was just thinking, and it dawned me in this purport that what is again? So it's like utilizing the moment in a positive way, or utilizing in chanting something. I don't want to do it, but what I would do it, and securing the position in myself into doing it, what is going to be actually more beneficial for my own progress. So that's why I was thinking how never again would be easier, because securing position into something and utilizing into the more devotional service or something, engaging in mind in a different manner.
Yeah, excellent point. And that's really the impetus from all of these is to take shelter of Krishna through the process of devotional service. Srivas Prabhu.
And thank you for bringing up the point of cooking oneself. And in case it seems a little overtly macabre, so to speak, Yudhishthira Maharaj, when he was questioned by Yaksha about different things, and then one of the questions he was asked is like, Yaksha asks Yudhishthira Maharaj is, what's the news of this material world? And he says, Asmin maha moha mahe katahe suaryagni ratri divendanena Masa rutu darvi paragattanena bhutani kalo pachaditi vartaha. So he says that this material world is like a frying pan, and it is being lighted up by the fire of sun. The days and night are the fuel. And then the months and the seasons are the ladle that churns. And then who is the cook? Then the living entities are being cooked in this fire, and the time is eating all of them. That is the news of this material world. Just in case it seems pretty, it is very much backed by the scripture about what is the news of this material existence.
Yeah, it may have been hard to see a few years ago, but now it's a little clearer. If you look at a map, a weather map of the United States, it looks like a little frying pan. It's just red, and everyone's like, ah! Almost like the copper planet. What a profound verse. Thank you for entering that into the discussion. Okay, so we have so far sick and tired. I'm sick and tired. I'm not doing this anymore. The next one is I'll show them. Next one is never again. And Prahalad Maharaj, in his prayers in 7th Canto, 9th chapter, his motivation is very instructive. It's that I'm doing this to please my guru. So oftentimes we think like, oh, I can't do this. But if I think of it as service, I say, okay, I can't do it, but if I'm doing it for someone else, I can do it. And if I have this, if I'm lucky enough to have this relationship that, yes, I want to please my guru, it's such a compelling mood that, okay, I'm fallen, I can't do anything, but I can rise to the occasion to please my guru because I love my guru. So this is Prahalad's mood and his motivation. And here's the verse that epitomizes it. 7:9:28. Evam janam dipatitam pravavahi kupe kama bikam anuya prapatam prasangad kridvatmasat surashina bhagavan grihita soham katam nuvisrajeta vabrityasevam. My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of my association with material desires, one after another, I was gradually falling into a blind well full of snakes, following the general populace. But your servant, Narada Muni, kindly accepted me as his disciple and instructed me how to achieve this transcendental position. Therefore, my first duty is to serve him. How could I leave his service? Purport, as will be seen in later verses, even though Prahalad Maharaj was directly offered all the benedictions he might have desired, he refused to accept such offerings from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. On the contrary, he asked the Lord to engage him in the service of his servant, Narada Muni. This is the symptom of a pure devotee. One should serve the spiritual master first. It is not that one should bypass the spiritual master and desire to serve the Supreme Lord. This is not the principle for a Vaishnav. Narottam Das Thakur says, Tandere charana sebi bhakta sanivas janame hoye abhilash. One should not be anxious to offer direct service to the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised that one become a servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord. Gopi Bhartu Padakamalayur Das Das Anudasaha. This is the process for approaching the Supreme Lord. The first service should be rendered to the spiritual master so that by his mercy one can approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead to render service. While teaching Rupa Goswami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. One can achieve the seed of devotional service by the mercy of the Guru, the spiritual master, and then by the mercy of Krishna. This is the secret of success. First, one should try to please the spiritual master, and then one should attempt to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also says, Yasya prasadad, bhagavat prasado. One should not attempt to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead by concoction. One must first be prepared to serve the spiritual master, and when one is qualified, he is automatically offered the platform of direct service to the Lord. Therefore, Prahalad Maharaj proposed that he engage in the service of Narada Muni. He never proposed that he engage directly in the service of the Lord. This is the right conclusion. Therefore, he says, Soham katam nuvisrajeta vabrityasevam. How can I give up the service of my spiritual master, who has favored me in such a way that I am now able to see you face to face? Prahalad Maharaj prayed to the Lord that he might continue to engage in the service of his spiritual master, Narada Muni. So this is the perfect alignment for one attempting to advance in devotional service, is to have this sense of love for the spiritual master and to want to serve. And this, I'm repeating what I just said, is extremely compelling, because even though I may not do it for myself, I may do it for love of my guru and appreciation and gratitude. Does anybody want to make a point or ask a question? Yes, Prabhu. 1, 2.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Thank you for all the amazing examples. Maharaj, one question I had was, how do we as practicing sadhakas develop detachment, or rather a sense of disgust toward the idea of trying to enjoy separately from Krishna in ungrateful ways.
How do you develop a sense for it?
A sense of detachment or disgust toward the idea of enjoying separately and ungratefully from Krishna.
Much of our disposition is born of our own natures. Krishna describes in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam about how people have different natures. So in fact, in teaching Uddhava, he says those who are extremely disgusted with the material world, their adhikari is for gyan. Those who are extremely interested in enjoying the material world, their path is karma. But for those who have a balanced view of life, they're disgusted with the material world, and they also know how to live in the material world and take just enough sense gratification so that they can be healthy and fit. They're for bhakti. They see both sides. So how do we become more disgusted? It's not that necessarily we have to try for it. Although Krishna says also to Uddhava in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam that he says that there's 4 kinds of evidence one should use. Shruti pratyaksham aitiyam, anumanam chatushtayam, pramaneshvanavastanad vikalpat savirajite. So it's vikalpat savirajite means you should develop a sense that the material world is unstable. Avanastanad. It's not stable, it's not going to stick. By using Anuman, see that you look at a geological map or a geopolitical map and just see how everything's always changing. And also see for yourself how everything falls apart in your life, and also take it from Shastra, and also from traditional wisdom. There are lots of sayings about that, how things slip through your fingers. And in that way, he said, become a little detached from the material world. Disgust sort of comes of its own accord, I think. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. You spoke about Mahatma Das. You say something about him. And I remember that he said that we have like a level 0 of satisfaction, and each one has different type of satisfaction in order to their karma and lifestyle, and so to practice Krishna consciousness, we must be at least in that level, and for each one is different. Like, for example, one people need like one pair of shoes, and the other one needs like 5 to be in that level. So that detachment is like specific for each one, and of course we must see if that desires are growing or are going down. So.
Yeah, we should be self-examining, and one of the times that's specifically mentioned in the Shastra for doing that is when you chant japa. Because it's a time, swadhyayaha, when you observe yourself and say, how much do I like this? Can I even sit here and do this? Or am I being called in every direction? If you don't measure yourself, if you don't observe yourself, then you can't know if you're improving or not. It's like one's biometrics. If you don't measure them, then anything can happen. Like people never check in to see how their bodies are doing. Oftentimes they get surprised, like, hey, guess what? You're really ill. You didn't even know it because, you haven't been watching. And therefore, because you weren't watching, measuring, trying to stay at a certain level, then you kind of, you lost the sense of what was okay to eat and not to eat and so forth. So we have to measure ourselves and see how we're doing. Okay, the last one. Are you ready? Yes. Okay, this comes from Gajendra. And his mood is epitomized by this following statement. I need help. I need help. I once, as I've said many times before, but I love the story, obviously, that I was distributing books in Santa Cruz on the street. I was with our beloved previous Pujari, who went away to take care of his mother and then could never come back because of visa problems. And we haven't seen him since. That day he walked out of the temple and said, "I'll be right back." And we were there on the street, and he distributed a book to this young woman who had 2 kids, and then he taught her the mantra. And she said, "What does it mean?" So I leaned over to see what he was going to say, and he just said 3 words: "I need help." I thought that's a nice way to think of it. So Gajendra is epitomized by the following verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, where in his prayers of surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead at 8:3:20 through 21, he says, "Unalloyed devotees who have no desire other than to serve the Lord worship him in full surrender and always hear and chant about his activities, which are most wonderful and auspicious. Thus they always merge in an ocean of transcendental bliss. Such devotees never ask the Lord for any benedictions. I, however, am in danger. Thus I pray to that Supreme Personality of Godhead who is eternally existing, who is invisible, who is the Lord of all great personalities, such as Brahma, and who is available only by transcendental Bhakti Yoga. Being extremely subtle, he is beyond the reach of my senses and transcendental to all external realization. He is unlimited, he is the original cause, and he is completely full in everything. I offer my obeisances unto him." Prabhupada says, "Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmanyanavritam anakulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktirutama." One should render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material profit or gain through fruit of activity or philosophical speculation. That is called pure devotional service. Unalloyed devotees have nothing to ask from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but Gajendra, the king of the elephants, was circumstantially asking for an immediate benediction because he had no other way to be rescued. Sometimes, when there is no alternative, a pure devotee, being fully dependent on the mercy of the Supreme Lord, prays for some benediction. But in such a prayer, there is also regret. One who always hears and chants about the transcendental pastimes of the Lord is always situated on the platform on which he has nothing to ask in terms of material benefits. Unless one is a completely pure devotee, one cannot enjoy the transcendental bliss derived from chanting and dancing in the ecstasy of the Sankirtan movement. Such ecstasy is not possible for an ordinary devotee. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed us how one can enjoy transcendental bliss simply by chanting, hearing, and dancing in ecstasy. This is Bhakti Yoga. Therefore, the king of the elephants, Gajendra, said, "Adhyatmika yoga gamyam," indicating that unless one is situated in this transcendental platform, one cannot approach the Supreme Lord. The benediction of being able to approach the Lord can be achieved after many, many births. Yet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has awarded this benediction to everyone, even to the fallen souls who have no heritage of anything in spiritual life. That's a nice phrase. That is actually being seen in the Krishna consciousness movement. Therefore, the path of Bhakti Yoga is the spotless process by which to approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhaktya hum ikayagrayam. Only through devotional service can one approach the Supreme Lord. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, Maya sakta manaparta yogam yunjan marashraya asamshayam shamagramam yatagyasasi tachrinu. Now hear, O son of Pritha Arjuna, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Simply by being attached to Krishna consciousness and by thinking of the lotus feet of Krishna constantly, one can fully understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead without a doubt. Last couple points. and then we'll have some announcements. And that is that for devotees whose lives are fully dedicated to Krishna, asking for help at particular junctures is not prohibited, because, as is given by Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in their commentaries to the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, one's body is used as an instrument to serve Krishna. One's family also is integral in one's existence here in the material world and practice of devotional service. And other accoutrements that we may have and use in the service of the Lord are part of our practice. And therefore, if the devotee happens to ask the Lord, please help when there's an emergency, this is not outside the realm of pure devotional service. It's, first of all, it's natural. And second of all, it is because a person's fully utilizing everything, not an inordinate request. In other words, one's not asking for oneself, but is asking for the sake of maintaining one's practice of devotional service. However, we should be careful to note that when Krishna takes away certain unwanted things, we should also find the lesson in that rather than remaining attached and then, as you were pointing out, saying, Krishna, why me? Why didn't you pick somebody else? Because after all, I am better than everyone else and I didn't deserve this. So Gajendra has this mood we can all relate to. At one point or another in our life, we'll realize that there's a crocodile on our leg. And there's a point at which I might then have the revelation that I can't shake it. There's no way I can get this crocodile off my leg. Did I say alligator and then crocodile? I hope that was... Okay. And so we should be aware of the fact that we're helpless and also call for help from Krishna. They do it in Vrindavan, but be aware of the fact that Krishna is already aware in helping us. But this is one of the... this is an impetus for us to move closer to Krishna, is by realizing that He's the one protecting me, He's the one maintaining me, and therefore, Krishna, what can I do without your help? Om Tat Sat. So, just as a summary of the 5 different moods in which we may find some impetus, we may find a mixture of these in our lives. And the first one is, I'm sick and tired of this. I'm not taking it anymore. You have to have a Dave Dibburn moment. And the next one is Dhruva Maharaja, all show them. Never underestimate the power of all show them if you really want to get fired up. And then the next one is never again, Bharat Maharaj. And if we can be aware of the fact that I've said that many times by being awakened by the words of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through the pen of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where he says, Jeev Jago, Gaura Chandra Bole. You already said that before. Realize that you've said it billions of times in billions of wombs, where he said, never again, never again. Oops, I forgot. And now I start over again. So try to become fully aware of that and say never again with your heart. Prahalad Maharaj, only please my Guru. And if you can't do it for yourself, do it for your Guru. Peter Burwash Prabhu, who I'm sorry to say recently passed away from this world, just recently on the 7th of July. I wasn't informed. I thought I would be, but somehow it didn't happen. And because he had asked me that if it comes up, could you come down? And I said absolutely yes, but I called a few times and I didn't hear anything back, and then all of a sudden I just got the news that he was already gone. Why did I bring that up? He used to say that he would think, what would I do is driving down the street, he would think, if my spiritual master was sitting next to me in the car, how would I be driving right now? Would I curse at somebody when they didn't put on their turn signal? Or Would I turn on the radio and listen to, K-pop or whatever that's called, and so forth. So, there's a way to kind of consider things in light of service to my spiritual master that may bring us to a higher level that we wouldn't do for ourselves. It's kind of an amazing principle. And then finally, Gajendra, I need help. Everyone say, I need help. I need help. Yeah, so we can call out to the Lord for his help in that way. Thank you very much for your kind attention. It was certainly extensive. Yes, Malini?
Prabhu, the point that you were mentioning about Devahutis, that she was frustrated, disgusted. I was thinking that many people in the life go through these situations, and some may take help from things may not necessarily be helping. But I was thinking how that connects to Prahalad's prayer that, you have kindly sent me a spiritual master, so I just want to serve my spiritual master. So it's also to know what is the right solution is also very important. And I was thinking how when you go out on Sankirtan, you meet a lot of people who are in this situation of frustration. Sometimes they may not even know that they need help, but the devotees somehow give them spiritual knowledge and the right medicine. So I was just reflecting how it's so important.
Such a good point. By giving Krishna consciousness, we see its efficacy for ourselves. We also see the various human conditions, and in administering the medicine, we also realize how much we need it as well. I have to say, last night, when we were watching the different people interact with the presence of the Supreme Personality of God in the form of His holy name, it's quite interesting. I mean, the world gets animated around the holy name. There were those couple of dancers, and I really felt like they were sincerely trying to, in the obviously state of intoxication and so forth, but they could have danced anywhere. And they weren't doing it in a menacing way, although, sometimes it felt, it was like slightly annoying, but that very slight feeling was, I felt much more, I felt that, wow, they're actually, like, Krishna's taking this as, as a service. They're trying to do something. They're really trying hard. I mean, I don't know how they kept it up for so long. Calisthenics, push-ups, kung fu moves, everything, ballet, Michael Jackson, everything mixed in, and just so sincerely trying to show we're with you, we're dancing here. And when we watch how other people become mesmerized by the holy name and how it goes out, then we realize that we really have a blessing. So to realize the blessing we have in our life, we have to give it out as much as possible. And the more we can distribute it, this is one of the meanings to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, saying that the more that the members of the Panchatattva distributed the contents, the more it's increased. So it increases in us. That's one of the ways that it increases. We give it out, and then we have this more of a perspective of what it is we're giving, because we see how it brings people alive. And we say, wow, it can really do that? Maybe I should take it more seriously. Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah, we have to stop. So we'll take these later because it's 10 to 10. We still have announcements, and everyone's got to make it to their next programs, and everyone was up late last night. Is that the right thing to do? Yeah, okay. So now we have some announcements. First, we have a very short announcement from Bhakti community, and then a brief announcement from our Sankirtan department. And we also want to thank everyone who joined us on Zoom today. Let's please give them a warm Hare Krishna.
And thank you to Shastra.
Oh, yes. I would like to thank Shastra Sarprada. I had this idea last night, I just kind of sketched it down in my book, but while we were driving to the temple this morning, I called Shastra Prada and I said, I need some references. I said, where are you? And he said, I'm at the temple. And he just finished his rounds. And it was perfect timing, so I felt it was Krishna's arrangement. So I told him what each one of these was aiming at, and he went through and found each verse and marked it. And that's why he sits back there.